short-term agreements, Superintendent Anderson, if I heard you correctly, that there are some short-term agreements in place right now that were, and those terms were reviewed in the committee. I just want to be sure that I heard it correctly. Is that what was said?
Exactly.
No?
That's what she said. Sorry, go ahead.
So, as Ms. Wilson noted, all tenants for this upcoming school year are tenants who are currently in our buildings with leases. So to give the example of Madison, their lease, as we work through their long-term lease, was extended to apply to their new space, to get to your earlier question around the recouping of costs during the summer months.
Okay. So, did the committee or will the board have the opportunity to see those documents? Okay.
I'm happy to share that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I have a question. The issue of liability that Ms. Richardson addressed, that wasn't really answered. I mean, I know in terms of North Legacy at Madison, they were already there, so there's something in writing for that one. But Team at Regard, North Star at Alexander and Boylan, how is that going to work? And also, is a team not going to be at Hawthorne now? It's just completely Hawthorne there? Okay.
Correct. So the team will not be co-located with Hawthorne. In the cases of all charter launches, there were MOUs that were put into place with the announcement of the charter launch with regards to facilities.
Wow.
Mr. Lewis.
I'm trying to get, I'm confused.
Hold on, Mr. Lewis. Can we please have order, please? Mr. Lewis?
I'm kind of confused here because I don't know no landlord that will let somebody move in their house without security and rent first. So how we're allowing people to move in, occupy the building, and we have no lease put in place.
Wow. That's pretty good.
It's a legitimate question. So that how, in the event that the lease isn't approved, or if it is approved, how is the district going to recoup any revenue for rent for the months that these folks are currently occupying the space?
So we have previously shared, and we would provide again a memorandum of understanding that our legal team feels would give us the ability to, recoup those funds in the event that anyone, did not go the distance on a lease. We don't have a problem providing, and we have the board with copies of both the MOUs and the leases, so that individuals can see the terms of both.
Another question I would have, in the details that were provided to the investigators, the cost of rent is basically equated by the square footage. So if there is a sole occupancy, the charge is $3 per square foot. If it's a co-location, it's $5.25 per square foot. Can we get a projected revenue?
And I'm happy to provide that.
Can we please have order?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm throwing off because I'm still stuck on the point that we have people in our building, operating our building. We have no cost. We have no money. But in the meanwhile, our children in no public schools are not policed. They're being inconvenienced. While another district, because they say charter schools is another district, they're allowed to allow their kids to come in, move in, operate our classrooms, and their stuff is not in order. So I don't understand how, if our priority is to make sure that we service children of North Public Schools, our children of North Public Schools are being inconvenienced while the charter school children are being handed, I mean, my feeling personally, I just want to say, I feel as though that the district don't understand that our priority is no public schools. and we pay everyone up here to represent North Public Schools. So Superintendent, I need to know, how is our children being inconvenienced in North Public Schools? When we're allowing the charter schools to operate our buildings
Up and run.
while they haven't paid rent or signed a lease agreement?
Mr. Lewis, once again, I will state that we have a memorandum of agreement and we have what a legally sound liabilities covered, and we have every intention as any good landlord, just like we did in the last 10 years, to ensure favorable pieces for the district in those leases and to get the resources that we deserve from those. As you know, when I first arrived here, there were a lot of promises to charters that they would get free space. We have not approached our work that way. We have not approached our work that way. Our track record
Please, can we have order?
Excuse me, the facts can be entered in public record anyway, but we have not approached our work that way, and our track record is clear on this. We have negotiated leases with charters that have 3 conditions, and we have briefed this board on this, and our track record on this is clear. Whether or not you believe we should be entering into any agreement with charters is a different point, but the 3 leases we have agreed upon during my tenure are very well documented. We'll share them again, and they have 3 key pieces to them. Number 1, it showed that they absolutely had to share their data with us to ensure that we were able to track equity and other clear measures, which they don't have to do by state law, but our leases made them do it. The second is they had to take their fair share of students with disabilities and other struggling students, which the law doesn't require them to do, but our leases do. And the third is they were fair market value, which means that the square footage was directly related to a very public appraisal process. All of the leases that this administration has negotiated follow those 3 tenets. Our track record is clear on that. We intend on keeping that track record, and that is different than what happened prior to my arrival. So we will align what we've done in the past with what we're doing now with those 3 conditions that preserve the principles of equity and efficiency and data integrity. And that is what we required in the MOU. We didn't just require money, which we did ask for, but we also required a lot of other specific pieces to ensure that we enforce and oversee the whole idea of equity as this piece rolls out. We intend to keep those principles in our next phase of the work, just like we did the first 2.
But just like Chairman pointed out, if these agreements are denied, you then inconvenience children for nothing. So what I'm
We've been in concept, the leases that we have currently in place have been approved multiple years in a row. The terms of those leases, because they fixed those 3 things, have not changed demonstrably. We have been in consultation with the state as always on these. We have every expectation they'll be approved. We have every past practice to show that we've collected on those monies, and we have a track record on this issue. So, with all due respect, the what if, our track record on this is quite well documented.
We're still talking about contracts that's already put in place. I'm talking about the Bulgar Avenue, Madison Avenue.
Thank you.
I'm talking about that we have no.
The state has already approved the long-term facilities plan, which would include that. The state has already approved leases that mirror the ones that we have for Regat, and we have an MOU with those that are binding. Those 3 pieces, to me, ensure that we are confident in what needs to occur.
In the meantime,
So, Mr. Chair, I have a
our
question.
kids is displaced.
Yes, sir.
So in other words, the message that I'm getting is it doesn't matter what the board is gonna vote on. It's already.
Basically.
Sorry, I just wanted to weigh in on that. We did ask the state for clarification on the board's role in the voting process regarding facilities, and the fiscal transition plan did lay out what our obligation is regarding facilities, and we're following what the new fiscal transition plan laid out.
But you didn't answer it.
And another question, Mr. Chair. Now, it was to my understanding that last night when we went over this in the committee, that these leases were already done and set in stone and ready to go. I'm guessing I was misunderstanding. Maybe I was asleep, but that's just what my understanding.
I didn't get that impression when the information was communicated. The impression that was given to what I heard last night was that they were in the final stages of approval, and that the district looks to have approval on those by the end of this month.
Okay. And all right. So okay. So in another. Okay. All right.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, excuse me. I just want to clarify something, Mr. Lewis. All of us up here don't get paid.
No, I was talking about behind you.
No, I know, I just want to make sure. Everyone
Can we please have order? Are there any other questions regarding the facility items that were reported? Ms. Corello.
I just want to just echo Mr. Jackson's comment. Based on the meeting that we attended yesterday, I was also under the impression that the leases were actually drafted, and the packet that we received was information that was just cut and pasted into the packet, and that I believe in the next meeting we were going to get a copy of the actual leases, which was a question that Mr. Jackson had asked, which was to actually have the copy, and I believe Ms. White said that for the next meeting we was going to have it. So I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page, because now it's two board members, thinking one thing and the other one's thinking something else.
Isn't the devil like this?
We were advised that we would get a copy of the leases at the next meeting, and the reason that we didn't get them yesterday because they were not approved. That's what was stated in the meeting yesterday. This is why we got it in this PowerPoint presentation, which gave us basically the main tenets of those leases, and we didn't actually get a physical copy of the lease. That was stated twice yesterday during the meeting.
Mr. Chair, I have another quick question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Jackson.
So the question still remains that these buildings are being occupied, and McGraw is a new launch. That's not something being renewed, that's something brand new. Because that school that is occupying that building was not there last year. So they're able to occupy, do what they're doing without an actual lease. Yeah, we voted on and that we drafted as a district, or excuse me, as a board.
How's the state of Alfred?
So you can answer regarding the approval.
She texted her. So I was trying to make sure that we are coordinated on getting folks the documents. So that was critical. So as I shared, there are leases in place with every single operator in New York that provide for the liability coverage that you articulate. There are MOUs that provide for what is necessary, including in the charter launches. And the combination of those two things plus the approval process with the state, we feel A, protects the district, and B, will allow us to maintain the three goals that we articulated earlier, which is the market value, data, and equity. And those things have been documented both in the prior leases and in the MOU.
Thank you. Ms. Matthias.
I just had a question about the recording out of the network meetings. How is that process going? So this is something that we're doing. The meetings with our
Assistant superintendent. So as a part of our restructuring from a board perspective, to ensure that we have the proper alignment, we're still engaged in obviously establishing some new committees that we didn't have last year. One being a personnel and policy committee, which we believe is critical for the development and the growth of the district and this board as we move forward and work on obtaining local control in those other key areas. We've also ensured that each board member has been aligned with an assistant superintendent, so that they can have monthly meetings with the assistant superintendent networks, and also have a greater understanding of what's happening with those individual schools. Numerous emails were sent out to board members over the course of the summer. We also discussed it during our board retreats. And in those emails and during the board retreats, board members were specifically asked to reach out to those assistant superintendents to set up those meetings so that they could take place on a monthly basis. An email was also sent to the assistant superintendents. To my knowledge, so far, myself and Mr. Jackson, we held our monthly meeting with Mr. Haggerty, and from my understanding, you held your meeting with Mr. Janamian also. At this point in time, I don't have an update regarding the meetings that were held with other board members. Ms. Corello indicated that she had issues with her scheduling with the assistant superintendent that she's been aligned with. and I'll work with her on that. I will have an update at our next board retreat in regards to the progress of all other board members, if that's okay with you.
Yes, we had some good news, in our meeting, so I just wanted to share one of our highlights, if that's okay.
All right, after we wrap up with this report, after we do the SUP's report, right before we go into public participation, if that's okay, I'll open the floor for you at that point in time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair Hassan,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Chair Hassan, I'd like to indicate for the record that we will have 3 new resolutions which will be in your packet this Friday for consideration at next week's meeting. They are involved with carryover and awarding of grants in the areas of IDEA, actually, in fact, I think, and all of them are with IDEA and various parts of that grant. So those will be submitted as late starters. It is the acceptance of the actual grant award and not an expenditure item.
Thank you very much.
Chair Hassan,
Ms. Corrello.
I just want to clarify your statement as far as scheduling with my assistant superintendent. I have tried to contact him in numerous occasions, have been unsuccessful, especially that he worked with the network with the manager principal that got fired, Mr. Dennis. And to the day we have not received the reason as to what the reason why Mr. Dennis was fired, being that it was a school on the rise, and he has done so much for that school within the year. So I would like to make sure that my network superintendent do reach out, because it's something that is upsetting to the entire community, especially in the Granger area.
Thank you. Duly noted. That's Superintendent Anderson. Thank you. If there are no more questions regarding the report that was provided for finance and operations, is there a motion to accept this report and the recommendations that will go forth from the committee?
Motion.
Second by Pearl. There's a motion to accept the Finance Operations Committee and the recommendations. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstain or opposed? Should lose abstain. Motion carries.
We now have a review of the agenda for the August